From the outside, our home looked like everything I ever wanted. Sunlight on the walls, the scent of fresh coffee every morning, and a man I thought I could trust. I stood by Daniel through everything, his career spirals, his sleepless deadlines, even those stretches when he barely looked up from his phone. I told myself love was loyalty. And I was loyal, maybe too loyal. He used to say, I only ever want one thing, to make my parents proud. And I believed him. God, I admired that about him. That conviction in his voice, the soft way he'd smile when talking about their sacrifices. I let it guide how I supported him. I wanted to be the woman beside the man who made his parents proud. Until I wasn't. It was ordinary. The moment it all fell apart. I wasn't looking for anything. Just a pile of receipts on the dresser, a message preview flashing across his tablet. A name I didn't recognize. A photo that shouldn't have been there. My chest tightened. I sat down slowly, phone in hand, heart in pieces. That's when the storm started. Quiet, controlled, and razor sharp. Would you like to continue or adjust anything in this first block? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT, diz, Chapter 1, The Perfect Lie. Block 2 of 3. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone or confront him in a wave of tears like in the movies. No. I stared at that message, the timestamp, the way he called her baby, a word he hadn't used with me in years, and I felt something deeper than rage. It was clarity, like the fog had finally lifted, and I could see him for who he really was. All those nights working late, the sudden shower when he got home, the distant look in his eyes. Pieces clicked together with cruel precision. I sat alone for hours that night. I don't even remember blinking. Just me, the blue glow of the screen, and my mind racing. The betrayal cut deeper because I had given so much. I'd sacrificed promotions to move for his job, missed family reunions because his schedule was tight. And still, I defended him to anyone who ever questioned our imbalance. But now I saw it. I wasn't his partner. I was his audience. And if Daniel was still the man who cared most about what his parents thought of him, then I knew exactly where this story needed to end. Not with yelling, not with tears, but with the one thing he'd never expect, from me, of all people. I was going to let them see him, the real him, the man behind the performance. Ready for the final block of Chapter 1? Or would you like to modify something here? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, Chapter 1, The Perfect Lie, Block 3 of 3. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed beside him, listening to his breathing, feeling the weight of every lie between us. And still, I kept my body still. My breath even. I matched the rhythm of a woman in love, because that's what he expected. But inside, something had already shifted. I was done playing the part. I was rewriting the entire scene, and he had no idea. The next morning, he kissed my forehead like he always did, said, "Love you," like it meant something, and I smiled. Not out of affection, but calculation. Every move from here on out would be deliberate. Me, making coffee. Me, texting friends. Me, researching lawyers with the same hands I once used to hold his. If he could keep secrets, so could I. Only mine had purpose. He wanted to make his parents proud. That was his mantra, his identity, his obsession. So I thought, what better stage for truth than in front of the very people he lived to impress? No tantrum, no warning, just dinner. A beautiful, warm, candlelit dinner, where I'd serve him exactly what he deserved. Would you like to adjust anything, or shall we move on to Chapter 2, The Calm Before the Storm? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, Chapter 2, The Calm Before the Storm, Block 1 of 3. I didn't say a word. Not that day, not the next, and certainly not the week after. I played the part with such grace I almost fooled myself. I cooked his favorite meals, laughed at his stories, and kissed him goodnight with the same lips that would soon expose every one of his lies. But behind closed doors, when he wasn't looking, I was documenting everything. Every message, every photo, every receipt. I became an archivist of betrayal. I learned more about her than I ever wanted to. Her name, her birthday, the hotel she preferred, the emojis they used, the playlists they shared. I even mapped out their timeline, how long it had been going on, how often they met, and the nights he claimed he was too tired to talk to me. Not a slip, not a one-time mistake. This was a parallel life he built while I kept our home standing. It was strange how calm I felt. Cold, even. But not numb. No, it was sharper than that. There's something powerful about holding the truth while the liar sits across from you at breakfast, chewing toast like nothing's broken. I didn't need to scream. I had something better. A plan. And it began with a phone call to his parents. Would you like to continue to the next block or change anything so far? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, Chapter 2, The Calm Before the Storm Block. 2 of 3. I told them I was planning something special, a dinner to celebrate a recent milestone in our marriage. I said it with a softness in my voice, the kind that makes people feel warm and welcome. His mother lit up, already asking what she should wear. His father chuckled and said, Finally, about time you two slowed down and celebrated something. I smiled through the phone, nodding even though they couldn't see me. I told them I'd cook their favorites, that it would be a night to remember. And oh, it would. Daniel didn't question it. If anything, he seemed pleased. A dinner with his parents was another chance to shine in their eyes, to be the golden son. He walked around the house talking about wine pairings and music playlists, like this was his moment. I let him. I let him believe he was center stage, because soon the spotlight would shift, and there'd be no place to hide. The days leading up to that dinner were some of the strangest of my life. I was serene, almost frighteningly so. I'd watch him text her while he thought I wasn't looking, and instead of heartbreak, I felt strategy. I folded napkins, polished glasses, rehearsed lines. It was almost theatrical, except this wasn't fiction. This was real life, and I was ready to serve the truth. Ready for the final block of Chapter 2, or would you like to adjust anything? Você disse, continue. O ChatGPT, DC, Chapter 2, The Calm Before the Storm Block. 3 of 3. I picked the date carefully. A Saturday evening, just enough time for anticipation to build, but not long enough for anything to slip. I sent a text to his mother confirming the time and menu, complete with a little heart emoji. She responded with hearts of her own, gushing about how lucky Daniel was. And all I could think was, not for long. There was a strange satisfaction in orchestrating this. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was leading. Each night I triple-checked the folder on my laptop. Screenshots in chronological order, photos labeled, messages annotated. I printed everything on thick paper, the kind that holds weight when you lay it down. Evidence, yes, but more than that, truth. The kind you can't argue with. The kind you can't unsee. I wasn't just exposing an affair. I was making sure they saw the man I had lived with in silence. The morning of the dinner, I woke up early. The house was quiet. Daniel was still asleep, wrapped in a lie he didn't even know was unraveling. I stood at the window with my coffee, watching the sun stretch across our yard, and for the first time in weeks I smiled, not the smile he was used to. No, this one was mine, genuine, steady, because tonight I wasn't the wife anymore. I was the narrator, and dinner was about to begin. Would you like to move forward to Chapter 3, A Toast to the Truth, or revise anything in this chapter? Você disse, continue. O ChatGPT disse, Chapter 3, A Toast to the Truth, Block 1 of 3. The house glowed that evening. Candles flickered on the dining table, casting warm shadows across the room. I'd spent hours making everything just right. Crisp linens, my best china, the smell of rosemary chicken drifting through the air. It was beautiful, almost cinematic. Daniel came out of the bedroom in his favorite button-down, adjusting his sleeves, completely unaware that this wasn't just dinner, it was his reckoning. He kissed my cheek and said, "You always go all out," and I smiled, the way a host does before the curtain rises. His parents arrived right on time, full of hugs and compliments. His mother brought a bottle of wine. His father told the same joke he always did at the door. I welcomed them in like nothing was wrong, like my world hadn't cracked open weeks ago. Daniel poured drinks, already soaking in their praise. He looked so proud, so sure of the role he was playing. I watched him from across the room and thought, He has no idea he's about to meet the real version of himself. Dinner started like any other. Small talk, laughter, clinking glasses. I passed the potatoes and nodded at the right moments, my heart calm, my hands steady. It was almost surreal how normal everything felt, knowing what was coming. I waited for the right moment, not too early, not too late. Just when everyone was full, happy, relaxed. Then I reached for my glass. Shall we continue to the next block, or would you like to make any edits first? Você diz, continue. O chat GPT diz. Chapter 3, A Toast to the Truth, Block 2 of 3. I held my glass gently, letting the stem rest between my fingers. I just wanted to take a moment, I said, looking around the table, my voice warm, measured, familiar. To thank you both for raising such a devoted, honorable man. Daniel lit up instantly, that boyish grin he wore whenever they praised him. He nodded modestly, playing humble while soaking in every word like wine. His mother reached for his hand. His father beamed with pride. It was perfect. I took a slow sip, then placed the glass down. And because I admire honesty so much, I continued, still smiling, tonight I thought it was only fair to show you the real man I married. I reached under my chair and pulled out the stack, neat, thick, impossible to ignore. The paper whispered as I laid it on the table. Daniel blinked, confused at first, then nervous. "What's this?" he asked, his voice dipping just slightly. I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. I opened the first page. "Let's start with the hotel on May 14th, I said, my tone even, my eyes locked on his mother's face. Then we'll move on to the text you sent her the next morning, still tasting you. Silence fell like a stone. His father leaned forward, his mother's mouth parted, stunned. Daniel's expression twisted, desperate to speak, but I kept going, page by page, text by text. The details, the names, the receipts, all of it, out in the open. No yelling, no drama, just facts, served fresh. Would you like the final block of Chapter 3, or prefer to adjust anything here first? Você diz, continue. O chat GPT dice, Chapter 3, A Toast to the Truth, Block 3 of 3. Daniel reached across the table, his voice cracking as he whispered, Clara, can we talk about this? But I didn't flinch. I simply turned to his parents. He always said you were his greatest pride, I said softly, my eyes never leaving theirs. So I thought you deserved to know what he does when no one's watching. His mother looked like she'd been slapped, her hand still frozen mid-reach. His father sat back, jaw tight, eyes suddenly distant, seeing their son in a light they'd never imagined. I kept my posture straight, my voice steady, no tears, no apologies. I wasn't here to shame. I was here to illuminate, to show the version of Daniel I had come to know behind closed doors. I wasn't loud. I wasn't cruel. I was just done protecting a man who never once protected me. And in that moment, with the truth laid bare between candlelight and shattered illusions, I felt something like peace. I pushed my chair back and stood up. Thank you for coming, I said, as calmly as if I were offering dessert. Dinner's over. You're all free to go. I turned to Daniel, meeting his stunned silence with quiet resolve. I spoke to a lawyer this morning. And with that, I walked toward the kitchen, the weight of betrayal finally off my shoulders, leaving only silence in my wake. Ready to move into Chapter 4, Shattered Pride. Or would you like to adjust anything in this chapter first? Você diz, continue. O chat GPT diz, Chapter 4, Shattered Pride, Block 1 of 3. He didn't follow me right away. I think the shock glued him to that chair. For once, Daniel had no script, no excuse, no carefully polished lie to lean on. His parents sat motionless, still absorbing the wreckage I had laid before them. The pride they once wore so effortlessly, so proudly, it had vanished. And in its place? Shame. Not mine. His. Heavy, bitter, unmistakable shame. The kind that sticks to your skin and doesn't wash off. When I finally returned to the dining room, he stood up, stammering. Clara, please, we can talk. but I raised a hand. Not in anger, just finality. No, I said quietly. There's nothing left to discuss. His mother looked at me then, really looked at me, like she was seeing me for the first time. And in that look, I saw something unexpected. Respect. A quiet kind of reverence. I had been the one betrayed, but I was the only one at that table still holding any dignity. Daniel turned to his father, desperate for an anchor. Dad, But his father just shook his head, slowly, painfully. You brought this on yourself, he said, voice low and tired. And in that moment, the boy who had always longed to be his father's pride looked small. Not broken, not sorry, just exposed. Like a magician whose trick had been ruined in front of the whole crowd. Shall I continue to the next block of Chapter 4, or would you like to modify anything? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, Chapter 4, Shattered Pride, Block 2 of 3. He followed me into the hallway, his voice fraying at the edges. Clara, I messed up, but don't do this. Not like this. I stopped, turned, and met his eyes. Those same eyes I once trusted, once loved. This isn't punishment, I said. It's clarity. You created a mess in the dark. I just turned on the light. He blinked, as if he hadn't expected me to be so calm, as if my silence had always meant forgiveness. That was his biggest mistake, confusing quiet with consent. Behind him, I could hear his parents gathering their things, the scraping of a chair, the soft click of a purse clasping shut. No one raised their voice. No one stormed out. Just the heavy silence of disappointment hanging in the air. He called after them, but they didn't look back. I think they couldn't. It's hard to face your child when everything you believed about them unravels in a single night. I walked past him without another word, and I heard him mutter my name again, almost like a prayer. But I wasn't listening anymore. Not to excuses, not to guilt, not to the pleading tone of a man who suddenly realized the cost of his choices. My hands weren't shaking, my voice wasn't breaking. I had already done the hardest part, loving someone who didn't deserve it. Now came the part where I finally chose myself. Would you like me to continue with the final block of Chapter 4, or make any edits? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, Chapter 4, Shattered Pride, Block 3 of 3. I stood by the door as they left, his parents first, walking slowly, not saying much, the kind of silence that carries years of hope slipping through the cracks. His mother paused beside me. Her eyes were red, but dry. She placed a hand on my arm, barely a touch, and whispered, You didn't deserve this. Thank you. For your grace. I nodded once, not trusting my voice, and watched her walk out into the night, her heels tapping softly against the tile like punctuation marks on the end of an era. Daniel stood alone in the living room, staring at nothing, hands on his hips like he might still find a way to undo it all. He turned to me one last time. What happens now? He asked. And I could see it, finally, the truth settling in. Not just that I knew, but that I was done. That I had slipped out from under the weight of his charm and his chaos, and I wasn't coming back. Now, I said calmly, you live with who you really are. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry in the bathroom. I went to the bedroom and started folding clothes into a suitcase. Not because I was running, but because I was ready to move forward. There's a strange kind of peace that comes after everything explodes. A stillness. And in that stillness I realized I hadn't lost anything. I'd finally let go of something that was never real to begin with. Would you like to proceed to Chapter 5? The new chapter, or make any changes first? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, Chapter 5, the new chapter. Block 1 of 3. The mornings felt different after that. Not quiet in the way sadness feels, but clean, like air after a storm. I didn't rush out of bed anymore. I didn't check my phone for messages that never came. I moved slowly, deliberately. like I was reacquainting myself with my own life. And in a way, I was. The house still smelled like rosemary and lemon from that dinner night, and every time I caught a trace of it, I smiled. Not because it reminded me of pain, but because it reminded me of strength. The divorce moved forward, cleanly, quietly. I didn't beg. I didn't fight. I let the lawyer handle what was his job to handle. I had other things to do. I started sketching out ideas for a blog. Nothing dramatic, just a space for women like me. Women who gave their all and got back crumbs. Women who learned too late that silence doesn't protect you. I wanted to write for them. For us. Not about revenge, but about reclamation. Friends reached out, and instead of pretending I was fine, I told them the truth. And do you know what happened? They stayed. They showed up. Some with wine, some with books, some just with space to talk. And I realized slowly that I hadn't been alone all this time. I had just been with the wrong person. Now I was alone, but surrounded. Would you like to continue with the next block, or make any adjustments here first? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, Chapter 5, the new chapter. Block 2 of 3. I traveled a little. Nothing flashy, just places that had been sitting quietly on my list for years. A cottage by the coast. A small town with bookstores and cobblestone streets. I wandered, listened, tasted things I hadn't tried before, and each day I remembered what it was like to make decisions without someone else's shadow stretching over them. I wasn't running from the past anymore. I was walking toward myself. I launched the blog a few weeks later. Grace after the fall. I didn't overthink it. I just started writing, honestly, openly. I told the story of the dinner, yes, but I also wrote about the little things, crying in my car, laughing too hard at bad sitcoms, learning how to eat alone without feeling empty. To my surprise, people listened. They commented, they shared. Women wrote back to me, thanking me for saying what they hadn't been able to say out loud. That connection, those messages, it gave me purpose again. And then one afternoon, as I was replying to a woman who said she'd been silently suffering for years, I saw a name pop up in my inbox. Daniel. My chest didn't clench, my hands didn't shake. I opened the message out of curiosity, not hope. It was long, full of apologies and memories and wishes to talk. He said he missed my voice, said he still hadn't forgiven himself, said maybe someday we could meet. Would you like to continue with the final block or make any changes here? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, Chapter 5, the new chapter block 3 of 3. I stared at the message for a long moment, not out of indecision, but out of reflection. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want an apology. What I had wanted for so long was respect. And now I had it. From myself. So I hovered over his words, all those pleas and regrets wrapped in digital ink, and then I did the only thing that felt right. I smiled and hit delete. A second later, another message appeared. This one from someone new. A man I'd met recently, kind and a little awkward, the kind who listens more than he speaks. He asked if I wanted to grab coffee this weekend, and I said yes. Not because I needed to fill a space, but because, for once, I was choosing someone on my terms. I was no longer someone's anchor. I was my own. And as I closed my laptop and looked out the window, watching the light shift across my kitchen floor, I thought, he lost his pride. I found my power. And that, I realized, was the most honest ending I could have ever written.